This is an explicit podcast where we try to keep the conversations as raw and authentic as possible with no intentions of hurting anyone. So if you're very woke, religious, or sensitive, we highly recommend you do not tune in. What's up, guys? Welcome to Let's Get It Podcast. This is... I haven't introduced you. Hold on. Yeah, episode 57. We have a recurring guest in the house. Bukan kali pertama dia datang ke podcast ini.
Let's go.
Yes. Okay, so Iqbal, I nak tanya lah. A lot of people like your insights, they like your explanations, criticisms of like political parties and the politicians. But what would you like to be known as actually? Like, what would you refer to yourself as? A political commentator, a critic?
I didn't expect that question. That's a good question.
I think it's about time you let the audience, let your viewers know.
I don't know. So I feel like the way I've branded myself has been like I'm a professional hater. Like I live to hate. I think hating gives me energy and happiness and fulfillment and warmth. So macam a lot of the content I do, pun I don't really promote any figure. I don't really talk up any side. I tend to bring stuff down. I tend to point at figures in power, especially people who are powerful, political figures,
Sure.
politicians, these things. And aku suka maki. Like memaki membawa aku kebahagiaan yang tidak, selain daripada mungkin kucing aku, isteri aku, like kebahagiaan dia has no equal. Because I feel like with power, the stupid Spider-Man quote, with great power comes great responsibility. And so I feel like my purpose on this earth has been, with the great power comes my annoying ass to annoy people in power.
Yeah, and I mean, at the start, you were probably just doing it out of you wanting to express yourself, right?
Yeah.
Giving your opinion. And then, it didn't take long for people to catch on to it. And yeah, you've actually built quite a fan base.
I think sebab
People respect your opinion lah. That's what I'm trying to say.
at its core, I rasa semua orang macam aku. Aku rasa semua orang pun suka memaki dan suka membenci dan suka negativity.
Yes.
Even if they pretend they don't. Even if we're all about spread positivity, spread love.
Yeah.
Studies have been done that show that negative content actually spreads better, does better, is more likely to go viral, is more likely to get engagement. That's just lumrah manusia. That's just the nature of people. I'm just tapping into those sentiments, and I think what I'm able to do is put people's anger and hatred into concise words so that they feel heard.
Okay, so, I mean, just to clarify, this hate, though, that you enjoy putting out there, it comes from a place of
Okay.
justice, right?
Okay, correct. Yes, I do. There is that sense of wanting to make the world a better place. And okay lah, macam kalau aku buat video and I direct my hatred in this sort of form, that's a somewhat productive way to channel that energy. Tapi, yeah, I don't know. There's a conflict, I think, within me, and I feel like I need to talk to a therapist, but this is so much cheaper.
Yeah, okay. All right, let's get into it lah. So this time around, we have PRN 15, right? Many people will be thinking, we just had an election last year, I think it's less than 12 months ago, right?
Yeah.
Is it? Yeah, so why are we having an election this time around again? I mean, I'm assuming that most of our viewers, I'm assuming that a lot of them probably are not hardcore politically invested people. So yeah, just probably explain a bit about what this current election is.
Yeah, this is your Pilihan Raya edition episode.
15.
15, yeah, PRN at least. And I feel like that's why I wore my baju Melayu, because it's like Hari Pilihan Raya, Hari Raya. And so
Yeah, you look great, bro.
Yeah, thank you. And I chose not political color to wear. I have I could have worn
noticed that.
blue, I could have worn red, I could have worn like green, but I think I went with a somewhat neutral color. So
I'm not gonna lie, I expected a red. But yeah, talk a bit about this current election.
okay, so why are we having elections again? Do you know Maggie Wang?
Yeah.
And she does her podcast, and she did an episode hari tu with Saddiq.
Saddiq,
where they talked about this exact thing, and he answered the question, why are we having an election again? Like, why do we have to come and vote again?
Yep.
And Saddiq gave, I think, jawapannya bagus lah. Like, I think he answered it in English for if you're the kind of person who watches Let's Get It, you are probably like English speaking, urban, like somewhat atas. So like probably you've already
Somewhat atas.
you probably already also fit into the demographic of viewers yang tengok Maggie Wang punya podcast. Maggie, if you're watching this, that's good job, Brian. You've already, I think you made it.
Oh, thank you. I hope so.
Kan.
Yeah.
Saddiq gave a very good answer, which is
The man's everywhere, bro.
kan sumpah Muhammad tu.
Everywhere.
The devil works hard, but
The
Saddiq
devil!
works harder.
Is that a joke or...
No, there's a saying, right? The devil works hard, but I think Saddiq works harder. Anyway,
Oh, okay. I thought you were referring to him as devil. Yeah, what's up?
so his answer was Kerajaan Persekutuan, which is the federal government. They deal with a whole bunch of policies that may not necessarily affect your daily lives, whereas Kerajaan Negeri, like the state governments,
Yup.
do enact policies that you can see right in front of you, because benda ni termasuk stuff like siapa akan pungut sampah korang kat depan rumah, siapa akan clear longkang-longkang, siapa akan baiki like lampu-lampu, and then also macam hal ehwal like land matters, stuff closer to home.
Yeah, so
literally.
Basically, a smaller scale of issues that they handle, but more the rakyat lah can actually affects the rakyat a lot as well.
Yes, correct.
Okay, so
Also, to answer your other question, like why are we voting again less than a year after?
this has a lot to do with what happened in the results of GE 15, right?
Yes, so 6 states are voting for this election. Selangor, Negeri Sembilan, Penang, Kelantan, Terengganu, and
Kedah.
So those 6 states are voting this election, and the reason the 6 states are holding elections this month is because masa GE15 was held, there was a lot of complaint that GE15 was being held during the flooding season, so there was a lot of fear and anxiety yang kita tak tahu, right? Like what if the day voting comes and then there's like banjir and people can't vote. So the 6 states got together and decided they're going to postpone their elections to later in 2023.
I see.
So that they can focus on the floods and then deal with elections later.
So if they were to take part in GE 15, right, all these 6 states, would this current election, it would not happen, right?
It wouldn't, yeah. So if they had decided to hold it at the same time, this election wouldn't happen. There's like a debate on whether this is actually a better thing. A lot of like political researchers and experts actually do say having more elections is a good thing. It's bad in the sense that like people will get tired, it costs more, people won't show up because they're tired and all these things.
You're talking about the voters or the politicians?
Voters, sorry.
Man, voters are so lazy, huh? The politicians are the one doing the hard work, man. Right.
I mean, yeah, I guess it's their job and like they get paid to do it, whereas voters don't get paid to vote, right? So macam, or I don't know, maybe some do. We don't know.
I don't know, bro.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm not supposed to vote this time. I'm in KL.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Yeah,
So yeah, I'll probably explain a bit about who has to vote and who is tidak layak.
So anyone above the age of 18, and you can check this on SPR on your website, whether you're eligible to vote or not, where to vote. I'm sure Brian can put links in the description and stuff. If you're registered in one of these 6 states, again, Kedah, Kelantan, Terengganu, Selangor, Penang, Negeri Sembilan, then you can go out to vote, and all the details should be online about where you will vote. Dan semua benda tu.
So I don't have to vote, right? I just want to clarify. Is it because my state, which is KL, it's not considered a state, it's called a federal territory, right?
Betul.
So is it because I'm in a federal territory, or because my federal territory is not taking part in the election?
Technically, there's like what, 13
states and 3 federal territories.
Yeah. 7 states have held their elections, their state elections. 6 states are about to hold their state elections, and then federal territories unfortunately don't have macam elections other than
the GE general ones.
Just because.
Okay.
So the reason a lot of political analysts are saying that separating elections is a good thing. If you hold elections more often, voters can hold politicians accountable. So, but for the most part, let's say you hold an election once every 5 years.
Yeah.
Politicians do macam surveys to find out how people are feeling.
Yep.
But the most surefire way to find out how people are feeling at any given time is an election. Like, the election is the best way for a politician to know what's the sentiment on the ground of the whole country.
Yep.
The reasoning is there's more opportunities for you to tell your politicians how you feel, to show them you're happy or unhappy with how they're doing. Dan benda ni sepatutnya lah akan make your politicians more responsive, more accountable to you as the voter.
Because there's more pressure to perform. So let's put it this way. If you support an EPL team, right, Manchester United, for example, you get a roster change possibly every end of the season, right? It's not going to be every 5 years. So if it was to be every 5 years, right, like how GE15 is, I think that would be a bit too long. You know what I'm saying? So it is. I would say that this PR15 is probably a pluser. I can understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, and like people will say, tapi it costs more to hold more elections. Tapi just
that's true, definitely.
See it as like this, like it costs more. Tapi the benefits of those costs, I think some people can say outweigh the cost in the sense of just like, yeah, if you have a government that's more accountable and responsive as a result, then I think the costs are worth it.
Okay, I want to ask also because I'm curious, like, how many times, if you do know, has this actually happened where there's a certain amount of states decided not to take part in the general election and then it is pushed forward till, the year later?
So before this, we had the Sabah state elections during the pandemic 2020. So it's happened.
Which was a delayed election.
I guess it's not that they delayed it. They brought it forward because I don't know if you remember, but then the Sabah state elections was the reason that like there was a whole wave during the pandemic where like people went to Sabah to vote ataupun to campaign,
I can remember.
Then they came back and then there was no quarantine and then
not by default. It happens only on special occasions where there is a reason to push it forward. Okay, Iqbal, I want to ask, so like we have the Dewan Negara, right, which is the Senate and the House of Representative, Dewan Rakyat. What is the difference, if you are able to explain? Like,
okay, so this is federal pula. So federally, we have the parliament, which is split into Dewan Negara and Dewan Rakyat. Dewan Rakyat are made up of ahli parliament, MPs, members of parliament, who are...
That is Dewan Rakyat.
Dewan Rakyat.
Yep.
Because the Rakyat vote for the representatives. Whereas Dewan Negara...
Yep. It's picked by the Agong, is it? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so it's like the allocation is based by how many seats the party. The point is they're not elected, they're appointed. Yeah. And they're appointed for a term of 3 years, and you can be appointed as a senator twice, and after that you can't be appointed as a senator.
Yeah. Coming to this current PRN, right? Just for the viewers watching, who is taking part?
I like your snacks are green. This is a very subliminal punya influence of voters.
It's not dark green though. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the parties that are contesting, actually, it's quite interesting.
Because for what people see, right, we look at it as Pakatan and PN for the most part. But what happened the previous general election, which caused a coalition, you want to talk a bit about that?
I'm assuming if you're watching this, you know who I am. That's why you're watching this.
Hey, how about me?
Or right, yeah. So, I made a video sebelum GE15 where I said it was PH fighting BN fighting PN. And before GE, it was PN and BN in government together. And so I said that it was essentially a battle between PH versus BN and PN. And then, of course, after GE15, we saw that fucking PH teamed up with BN. And so now they're going into this election, PH plus BN versus PN, which is really just, we're in the multiverse of madness. It's like giving me such a headache to think about. But here we are. And so the main sides in this election that you need to know are PH plus BN versus PN. And then there are other parties that we'll talk about in a sec. Tapi for the most part, I think the reason I'm still throwing my weight behind Pakatan Harapan and by extension, fucking Barisan Nasional.
Really, by extension, it's not by preference.
Not by preference.
I see.
My hatred, again, I'm driven by hate. I hate Barisan Nasional. I will say this. I ascribe and credit them for 99% of the problems that we're currently facing in this country. Tapi after GE15, we were left with three choices. Number one, it was either PH from the government with PN. Number two, it was either BN from the government with PN. And number three, it was either PH from the government with PN.
So let's say, I mean, because of what happened during the GE15 results, right?
Yeah.
Would you have wished that PH would have joined with any other party other than BN?
Honestly, this is an unpopular opinion among many people because...
Join with PAS?
Yes, formed a government with PN instead. Like, number one would have actually been my first choice. Because, again, I fucking hate BN. I hate everything they stand for. I hope to God there will come a day where they are just absolutely destroyed and decimated and thrown into the dustbin of history.
Calm down, bro.
But I guess there was a lot of bad will between PH and PN in the sense that PN was made up of Bersatu, who PH see as traitors, and then Bersatu see PH as they left PH because of a lot of unhappiness regarding like issues of race, issues of religion. They felt like they were selling out. So there was a lot of bad blood between PH and PN. Immediately after, one of the PN punya generals said that they will never work with PH. So that was essentially option one, immediately thrown out. Like, tak boleh.
Yeah.
We were left with two options realistically. It was either BN work with PN again or BN work with PH. I didn't want option number two, BN and PN, because that would have been back to what the government was before the general election. Like, it would have been back to square one.
Yeah.
That would have been, I think, the worst possible outcome. And so, of the possible scenarios, I think we got the not so shitty one.
But how about...
Syed just asked a question, right? My buddy who's helping out. So what happens if PH were to work with PAS instead? Would that actually be a possibility back then?
So that's the thing. It's like, I think in Malaysian politics, nothing is impossible anymore. And there was a time when like PAS was in a coalition with Pakatan. They were called Pakatan.
Yeah.
Pakatan Rakyat. It's really weird because like you have all of these pre-2014 pictures of like Hadi together with Lim Kit Siang with like Lim Guan Eng, and like they're holding hands and like they're hugging.
To people that are casuals and they're only trying to keep up this election, the last election, right? They would be very confused, you know, because I've looked back as well and I noticed that they were in the same party together.
Actually, MCA was saying that like if you vote for DAP, you will get PAS. It's just so weird to me, like how things shift in Malaysian politics. Tapi macam again, so sebab tu aku cakap tak ada benda yang mustahil dalam politik Malaysia. Sebab pada satu ketika dahulu PAS dan DAP berkawan, sekarang PAS dan DAP bermusuh, dan DAP dan babi UMNO pula berkawan. Like anything can happen. And in the scenario that you're asking about, I think after GE15, could PAS sahaja have teamed up with Pakatan to form the government? I think theoretically that would have been possible. It just wouldn't have happened because PAS, they were already full in on the like teaming up with Bersatu. They
don't like Coldplay.
They're really committed to not letting Coldplay perform.
Okay, so it's been about a year since PH and BN has been working together. What do you think has, in your opinion, has happened throughout that time? Would it increase their chances of winning during this state election because they're working together, or would it be a tougher challenge?
I think a lot of the macam reports I've been reading from political analysts, pakar-pakar politik, and tengok benda ni, diorang semua cakap that this should help, but we don't know for sure, right? It all depends on a number of factors, like how many people turn up to vote and how many people who turn up to vote will actually vote how they're supposed to vote. I'll explain that. Back before election, kind of just like on the voting ballot nanti, you're either voting for PH or you're voting for BN or you're voting for PN. Now, what PH and BN have done is they've agreed who's running where, so that it's either just PH versus PN or BN versus PN. And so the question now is how many PH voters will vote for BN if their seat has a BN candidate sahaja, no PH candidate, and how many BN candidates will vote, BN voters will vote for PH if their seat only has PH sahaja, no BN. We won't know for sure. This is the first time in fucking history that BN and Pakatan are joining forces to combat what they say is the bigger threat.
This is probably the most confusing time for voters, right?
Sumpah sial. Aku macam what the fuck. I do this for a living pun aku sakit kepala siot.
Bro, most confusing, but also it's nice to know that we are probably expecting the most turn up in voters.
Tak.
No, I mean for the sorry, we've had the most turn up for the previous election.
Yeah, but then so that was function of the fact that they now let 18 to 21-year-olds vote.
When did this rule take place?
Like very recently.
Basically, only the last election.
like last year. So
I see. That explains a lot.
Because of that new group of voters, we had the highest number of people showing up to vote ever in history. But in terms of percentage-wise, it wasn't the highest percentage-wise.
I've got something to ask up because a lot of people that would want to support PH this election, they are concerned with Zahid being in position, right? Having such a high position just solely because of his criminal past, right? Over 40 plus criminal charges during his time under Najib. So there's a lot of concern, and do you think that that's going to be a big factor that will affect the results for PH this time around?
That's the thing. It's like during the Sabah election, it didn't. BN did really well. There was like a pilihan raya kecil in Cameron Highlands at one point, and again, it didn't really affect BN. BN did really well. And so that's why before GE15, BN was really pushing to have the general election sooner rather than later, because they were really confident of their chances in election. So it didn't seem like the court cases and all that had much bearing. But then just on the state level, on the federal level, because BN would come to power federally, I think people were more aware that like, okay, shit is getting real. Kita kena get our shit together and go out to vote and make sure BN doesn't take full government. But then when the stakes were not as high, people didn't seem to care much about BN's or Zahid's criminal cases. And for me, especially, I've made a video talking about Zahid's cases. Like, I've criticized him and I talk so much shit about him. Of course, when the day comes, I want to see justice fulfilled. Whatever form that may take.
For your preferred party to win, right, Zahid will still be in his position. How do you rationalize that outcome?
The way I live with myself is I look at the possible scenarios, and no matter what you want to say, this is still the best possible outcome of all possible scenarios. You can talk about, there's like scenarios where we have everything we want, but I personally just don't think those scenarios are possible. So, but if we look again before GE15 and BN and PN were in government together, they were fighting a lot, and that's why
you think it could be much worse.
Yeah, so that's why we were seeing, for example, Muhyiddin being forced to step down and Ismail Sabri coming up as prime minister, because there was a lot of infighting within the government when BN and PN were in power. And so right now what we have is PH and BN coming to the table and saying, look, we can't have that anymore. Like, we need to run the country. We need to come together and just have our shit together. Lepas tu, dorang setuju lah that like, okay, kita akan bekerjasama to the extent that it will guarantee stability and not fuck up the country, even if we're going to be fighting behind the scenes. So macam, again, personally, how I moralize it and rationalize it to myself is this is still the best possible outcome ataupun the least shit outcome.
I see. We can't be too picky.
I think you can be picky. I think you can demand more, ask for more.
Yeah, but you can't expect it right away.
Yeah.
So, just this current election, right? What are the big talking points that would also influence your decision on who you would be voting for?
So I think the things that have mattered the most to me personally have been reforms. Just like being able to implement gradual changes to make this country a better place to live, whether that's in terms of the economy, whether it is in terms of macam just making life more bearable for minorities or whatever. And of course, again, expect more, demand more, ask for more, tapi is just like, be realistic. And I don't want to be the person who like tells people to temper their expectations and all these
Yeah,
things.
yeah.
Tapi that's just how the world works, unfortunately. So macam contohnya, the things I've been happy about with the government is the whole childhood and motherhood citizenship thing. Like
Yeah.
like that's happened. Fucking tolls, bro.
Yeah.
Like the fact that we're now starting to see, oh, we can pay with something other than fucking touch and go kat tolls, bro. You can now pay with credit card or Visa Mastercard, not touch and go.
Oh, I haven't tried that
Yeah.
out
So
yet.
this happened maybe within the last couple days.
Oh, okay, yeah, I definitely have not tried that out yet. Okay, that's a good
Yeah,
thing.
we've all been complaining about how touch and go has a monopoly on the system for the past 20 plus years. And
Yeah.
finally, we're starting to see some movement on that. So macam incremental, gradual change. Of course, I would love it if change can happen much faster. Tapi the first PH administration, I don't know if you remember the whole ICERD issue.
When was this? 2018.
This was 2019.
Yeah.
So ICERD is an international humanitarian treaty that like most countries in the world have signed up to. ICERD stands for International Covenant on the...
It's an NGO, is it?
No. It's like a UN punya treaty.
Uh-huh.
International Convention on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. Which like, you would think eliminating racism is a good thing that of course most countries will be on board for.
Uh-huh.
And so Malaysia is like one of the very few countries yang tak sign this thing.
Until recent.
Until so PH pertama under Dr. Mahathir had wanted to sign the convention and join the rest of the countries around the world. Tapi because when you eliminate racial discrimination, you're talking about stuff like special privileges for Malays.
Yeah, race politics. Yeah,
All these
will take a
things.
toll.
And so there was a huge rally against the Pakatan Harapan administration at the time. It became
By a huge rally
like Malay rights groups like PAS,
past supporters.
PAS supporters, and there was a lot of discontent against Pakatan Harapan for, you know, they were saying of like trying to erode Malay rights and all these things.
Yeah.
And me personally, I studied human rights law, international humanitarian law at university.
Yeah.
I wrote my whole thesis when I graduated was about this topic. So macam I thought that this was a good thing that everyone could get on board because like everyone wants to be against racism, but no, there's a very significant portion of this country that are not on the same page as maybe me, you, and the guys in this room that want things to be the way they are and are threatened by change happening faster than they would like it. So as much as I would like change to happen, I'm starting to realize, unfortunately, it probably has to happen gradually.
Let's go deeper into this race politics thing. So it's been used as a strategic weapon, right, for certain political parties to have the edge over. Everyone knows this by now already. It's something that's been done for decades, right? And today it's surprising to see that it's still more prevalent, than ever. If you were to try and understand from their perspective, right, apart from the fact that it does give them the political advantage, right, or it helps them get more political support, what other rationale would they have to still allow or weaponize this race politics? If you could actually try and understand, because I can't see that the point, apart from just using it as a weapon.
Yeah, I mean, okay. So I think, and I'm speaking as a Malay, right?
That's why you're answering the question, not me. Yeah.
So macam, there are legitimate like anxieties and worries on the part of the Malay majority, in the sense of just like, even after all these years since Merdeka, Melayus still segments, like if you look at macam ownership of shares and stuff, Bumis own the least. If you look at income and measures of wealth, then semua benda tu Bumi Putras have the least. If you look at the top 10 richest Malaysians right now, and this is declared wealth, who knows what actually some people have stashed under their mattresses. Tapi the 10 recognized most rich Malaysians, I think 9 of them or 8 of them are Chinese, one of them is Indian, and then one of them is Arab guy
Yeah, yeah.
who just happens, like, if you're Arab, you're Malay in this country, whatever.
Happens to stay here.
Yeah. Yeah. Dia macam, okay, so there are legitimate grievances and anxieties and worries on the part of Malays living in this country who think that they've been left behind, who are worried that other people are doing well, kenapa kita masih dalam situasi yang sama yang kita that we've been in for the past however many years. And where they go wrong is macam they look at this situation and they immediately ascribe it to race. Oh, it's because our race is tertindas, rather than looking at it in terms of class. Sebab ada je orang Cina miskin, orang India miskin, orang lain miskin, tetapi diorang tak pandang benda ni secara class. They decide to look at it in terms of race. Padahal at the top layers of society, it's the same rich Malays, Indian and Chinese people who are oppressing you, who are making sure they're not paying you fair wages. So macam, yeah.
Who are trying to be anti-culture barat, tapi they're all Anglophiles themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of hypocrisy we are seeing. But I also feel like if you want to be really rational and trying to think from their perspective, right, a lot of them are just, they're choosing who they want to choose, supporting who they want to support. It's a way for them to fight for putting food on the table for their kids. That's what they think, like, at least their intentions are good that way. But Syed Saddiq has always been a big pembangkang of like the NEP or Bumi Putra rights. He's also talked about very vocally about how you have a Chinese student who is able to get into an Oxford University but still not eligible for scholarships because their reasoning would be because the KPI quota has already been hit for that specific race. What do you think about all these?
Okay, so on Syed Saddiq, and I say this as someone who generally, I'm a fan of his. We're Twitter mutuals. We like interact sometimes.
So there's a part where you dislike as well.
Yeah. So macam tak. I guess when he first entered politics, he threw his weight behind Bersatu, which is a race-based party, which was Malay, which I guess disappointed a lot of people because they were like.
When did he first join?
At the beginning of Bersatu forming, like 2016 or so, maybe.
So he was working under Mahathir for a couple of years as well.
He says he wasn't like working with Mahathir directly. He says like Muhyiddin. I don't know the full story. I think it was like Muhyiddin maybe pulled him on board, and he over time, of the stuff I've read, he got really close with Muhyiddin. He credits Muhyiddin for a lot of macam
his growth
in his political journey. But even before that as well, like he was a Perdana fellow under the BN administration. So I think there was always a part of him that was very pro-establishment until he started criticizing Najib for the whole 1MDB thing, and then he was saying that he had a lot of opportunities stripped away from him, and he was like targeted, and his family was like targeted because of his outspokenness, and that's why he eventually like joined Bersatu and then joined Pakatan and then won the government and all these things. You
can respect that side of him that was able to be vocal about that.
Yeah, especially given the circumstances, the fact that he was an establishment dude for a period of his time.
So he was putting his job at risk as well.
Betul,
right?
betul. So macam I respect that, and I think that's part of the reason why I have high standards for everyone else. About macam if people like at the time, people like him, people like Muhyiddin, people like Mahathir could, criticize YMDB, why couldn't people who had nothing to lose? Like, what the fuck? Apa masalah korang?
Yeah.
So he has that on his track record. He was on the right side of history in that regard. But then the whole Bersatu thing, and then he was there during the Sheraton move when Pakatan Harapan fell, and eventually he didn't join the BNPN government.
Was that when he launched his own?
Yes, it was soon after. Muda. I don't remember when he launched Muda, but it was after the Sheraton move lah.
Okay.
A lot of especially PKR people really, 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 really fucking hate Syed Saddiq, bro. They call him like Cucu Atok. They call him a Trojan horse. They call him macam, because everyone sees him as macam
a virus.
Yeah. Like Mamat ni. There were old tweets of his where he criticized Anwar Ibrahim, like said some really not nice things about Anwar. So macam understandably, PKR people are very, very suspicious of Saddiq and don't like him at all. Especially after he created Muda, people especially were saying that like Muda is just here to macam kacau the
Do you
competition.
think that's disrespectful to Syed Saddiq? Because let's say, right, I mean, what do you think of his whole idea to start his own, right, and compete on his own in this election? Because it's not an easy task. It's a very tough task. The amount of criticisms that he has been taking, right? How about you try? What if you were to see it from his point of view? What he's actually trying to do right now? What do you think of it?
Okay, I will say this about Syed Saddiq and Muda.
A lot of criticism is about his age, which I don't think that's a very strong criticism.
Yeah, just like yang tu, who gives a shit lah. As an entity, I like what they're doing. I like what they stand for. I just okay. So katakan kau nak masak scrambled egg kan?
Yeah.
Scrap that. Katakan kau nak buat egg drop soup kan? So you've put the water.
Apa tu egg drop soup?
Egg drop soup, tak tahu? You don't know? Do you know what egg drop soup is? You know what egg drop. Nanti you cari gambar.
Yeah, boleh Google.
So egg drop soup is the soup where you crack the egg into the water and then the egg becomes like sedap and soupy.
Yeah,
anyway, so you put the water in the pot. You put the pot on the fire. You heat the water up, and then the step that you're supposed to take is you're supposed to crack the egg, and then the egg falls into the water and makes the soup.
Yep.
What Muda is doing is they're putting the egg into the water without cracking the egg, so benda tu jadi fucking hard boiled egg. So benda tu terpesong daripada the arah that you were supposed to take it. In the sense that right now this country is not ready for third parties, and third parties, I think personally,
why is the country not ready?
It's a function of how we vote. So kita guna sistem pengundian that's known as first past the post. First past the post ni is whoever wins the most votes wins. So katakan ada 4 orang
it's a democracy
bertanding.
based.
Yeah. Katakan ada 4 people contesting. The first person gets 100 votes. The second person gets 90 votes. Third person gets 80 votes. Fourth person gets 70 votes. The person who got 100 votes wins. Even though candidates B, C, D, 90, 80, 70, more people didn't vote for candidate A than voted for candidate A. Do you know what I'm saying?
I think what you're trying to say in all is like he's there to dilute.
Yes. Yes. So first past the post just means, let's say there are 4 candidates.
Okay, yeah, I understand. So you Syed Saddiq's party, which is you say possibly could dilute all the votes or will dilute the votes from the major 2 parties.
We don't know because this will be their first time like contesting, and we'll see how they do. But yes, that's generally been the effect of third parties in countries that use first past the post. And then again, studies have been done on this. They show repeatedly that if a country has first past the post voting, chances are.
So I'm still a bit confused on this, right? So you have two main parties, and then Syed Saddiq is the third party, let's say the third force. I would assume that this will not affect the outcome of the 2 parties, because whoever wants to or whoever would vote for the 2 bigger and more established parties would already do that. Maybe some have decided to vote for this this third force party. But how would it be diluting?
Okay, so katakan, I'm just going to point on an imaginary board here. So katakan this is PHBN, katakan this is PN, katakan this is Muda.
Yeah.
PHBN, let's say without Muda, PHBN would get 110 votes.
Yep.
And let's say PN would have gotten 100 votes.
Yep.
Kan? So 110 votes, enough. They have 10 votes more than PN, so they win.
So they win.
But then Muda comes into the picture.
Yep.
30 people who are voting for PHBN are like, hey, we like
Muda.
We don't actually like PHBN that much. We want to vote for someone else. So 30 people from PHBN vote for Muda. So now it's 80 votes for PHBN, 100 votes for PN, and 30 votes for Muda. Therefore, who wins now?
PN. But PN could be... the people who would vote for PN could think the same as well, right? They don't want to vote for PN, so they would vote for... wouldn't that be...
Yeah, so that's theoretically. Tapi, so Muda announced that they're running in seats that are mostly Pakatan Harapan supporters.
Yeah, that's what
So
I heard.
and so Muda is positioning itself as a progressive party, as a multiracial party, as a macam more liberal-ish
Yeah, liberal,
punya
definitely.
party lah kan.
Mm.
And so the kinds of voters who would more likely vote for them are people who would vote for
PH
PHBN
as well.
rather than PN. Like PN voters, if you're conservative and Malay and traditional and you want an Islamic government, you're probably not going to vote for Muda. So Muda is more likely going to tarik voters from PHBN rather than PN.
Oh, okay, I see. Okay, now I completely understand, because it's there's definitely a direct conflict, especially when you think about who they are competing
Yeah.
directly against.
Yeah,
Okay.
so yeah, exactly. So for example, like sorry, I forgot my punya nama. Abe is running again. Fucking don't
Abe
know.
or Abe?
Abe. Abby.
Bro, damn disrespectful, man.
Yeah, so
Abby, yeah.
she follows me on Instagram.
Yeah.
Abby,
So disrespectful.
sorry.
Unfollow this guy. Dude.
like all the
He
best.
doesn't even like you.
No, hold on. I respect what you're doing. I wish you all the best. I'm just saying this is how I feel. Okay, so she's running in Banda Utama against a PH candidate, and PH, the candidate over there, Jamalia, I mean, she's quite active in doing stuff in her.
Which is a PH candidate.
Yeah, so she's a PH candidate, and so she's currently the incumbent of that seat. So what Abe, by running in Bandar Utama, is doing is she's essentially running against PH versus, like, for example, Muda is not contesting in Kedah. Kedah are mostly PN punya seats, and Muda decided not to contest that because
Why do you think?
I don't begrudge them for this, because of course, again, like I said, Muda is mostly going to be progressive, young, urban, macam more
Liberal.
educated, liberal punya
Yeah.
voter, and so they know if they run in
Kedah,
they're more likely going to get wiped out rather than maybe having a shot
Yeah.
in Selangor, for example. Tapi itulah dia. It's the way, given how our voting system is set up, they are a direct competitor to PH in terms of the voters that they're trying to attract.
Yeah, without question.
And so for me, I tak rasa Muda's like existence in politics
Yep.
is necessarily a good thing.
At this moment.
Yes. Again, I appreciate and I respect and admire what they're doing, what they stand for, what they're trying to achieve.
Yep.
I just tak rasa this is it.
Well, did you manage to catch Syed Saddiq's response when people asked him about why they're competing directly against PH?
What do you say?
I can't remember, but I was hoping you managed to hear. No, you did.
I mean, no, I've spoken to like Muda folks and stuff, and like that's the general gist of it. It's just like PHBN have not been as progressive, as reformist as people have liked, and I'm not going to rebut that. There are fair criticisms you can say towards this government, and so Muda is saying that they're running so that they can push the government to be more reformist and hold the government to their promises and all these things.
Also, Syed Saddiq, I think something that's very important is he needs to get experience under his belt, and also for his members, right?
Yeah,
That's also a big.
I don't think it's a bad idea that they're doing so.
Yep.
It's just me personally, like morally, how I feel about it is I tak rasa it's a good thing.
Probably one of the reasons he had to show that he's doing something to his party instead of his,
That is, I think that's a very just to say that he's just.
he can't sit still kind of
Yeah,
person.
just to say that he's just doing it for the sake of doing it, right? I think that's a very quite a negative criticism, because
Yeah, no, there are legitimate reasons why he's running and why
experience. I
they're
think
doing
that's
this.
a very important point.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of legitimate reasons why they're doing this. I just don't agree with them, but I will say that they're legitimate.
Okay.
Itu je.
Yeah, respect your opinion as well. So yeah, okay, Iqbal. I guess that wraps up summarizes your thoughts just on Muda and Syed Saddiq and all right now. The party that I'm sure most people know already that you're not gonna be on the side of, PN. What are your thoughts about them as a party, or what they have been doing so far in a couple of years?
I find them repugnant. Everything they stand for, they oppose everything I personally believe in and stand for, in the sense of just like,
The main ones.
yeah. So the main ones, I mean, first of all, PN is made up of Bersatu and PAS, like Gerakan is in there, but they're just like, what the fuck are you even doing there, bro? Bersatu is a Malay race-based party, and it's the same reason that I hated BN. So my whole family actually have been anti-BN from fucking Merdeka, bro. Like, I grew up in an environment where everyone...
That's a long time ago, bro.
Yeah. I grew up in an environment where everyone on both sides of my family, my dad's family and my mom's family, somehow, every single one of my aunts and uncles...
So your mom's side, as you mentioned before, is from Kedah, right?
Yeah, like Taiping area. I think she was born in Taiping, and then her mom and my... So my grandparents moved to, like, the Kedah area. Okay. My granddad was a police officer.
Yeah, which is less common to be... a non...
Yeah, I don't know. I really am like so weirded out by my family, in the sense that how are every single one of you anti-BN? It's like, this is really weird. Anyway, I grew up in an environment where everyone I knew actively hated the government, actively wanted a change, and so actually my uncles and aunts had a favorable view of PAS. This was before 2014, when PAS was still like part of opposition and stuff. Yeah. And then especially between 1999 during Reformasi and 2014, where PAS was part of the Pakatan government.
Yep.
PAS of the Pakatan opposition. At the time, PAS stood for something else. PAS stood for clean governance. They stood for anti-corruption. They stood for like diversity, like multi-racialism and all these things. Whereas the government, BN at the time, stood for ethnic divisions. You had MCA, MIC, and UMNO. They stood for sectarianism. They stood for dividing society into sections. And so I've always believed that politics should be based on ideals and principles, not on demographics, not whether you're Malay, whether you're Chinese, or whether you're Muslim or non-Muslim.
What's your reasoning for that?
Because if you're going to make the world a better place, you have to make the world a better place for everyone. Takkan you not make the world a better place for just this one group at the expense of another group? It's like, what the fuck? Apa punya jenis punya pentadbiran tu? Okay, yeah. And so right now we have an opposition, Perikatan Nasional, who is, again, I think they've regressed into that. They're now, their whole thing is they're going to be the most Malay, they're going to be the most Islamic, at the expense of non-Malays and non-Muslims. Yeah. So a lot of stuff to do with macam rights of minorities, rights of benda ni, they don't give a shit, because they don't have to give a shit, because they're not trying to get non-Muslim and non-Malay votes. But okay, they're saying that they are, so they're doing a lot of weird shit. Like a month or so ago, I attended a PAS event.
What, were you invited or?
Yeah, so we were invited as like I went as part of work. They had invited like a bunch of media organizations, BFM being one of them, and the event was hosted by PAS's youth wing. And it was like a non-Muslim outreach punya evening, where they had PAS has a non-Muslim wing. Don't ask me about it. I don't fucking understand why.
Wait, when you say they have a non-Muslim wing, you mean that the people in that wing, they are
non-Muslims? Yeah. Yeah.
The members of their party are non-Muslim. Yeah. But what do they do? Okay, fine. I mean, there has to be they have to be doing something that I would say is good.
I say this as a Muslim. I am a practicing Muslim. I try to pray 5 times a day, fast during Ramadan, all these things, the bare minimum that like makes you a Muslim. And PAS brands itself as an Islamic party, and that they want to run this country based on Islamic principles. A lot of what I stand for is derived from Islam also. Tapi we have very, very different views about what that entails and what that means. And so for PAS, that means running the country based on Islamic principles and all these things. Whereas I believe that stuff like not oppressing minorities, freedom of religion, making sure that like we don't force students to learn, like we don't force non-Muslims to have to learn or sit through dua in sekolah is a thing. It's because that's my relationship with my own religion. Why should other people have that same relationship? Tapi For PAS, because they believe that Islam is the true religion, which I also believe in, tapi their macam conception of what that means for everyone else is different from what mine is. So this non-Muslim wing, I guess I spoke to a few folks, they believe
Are they Chinese?
the ones that were at the event were
Indian
Indian.
or Chinese?
Were
Okay.
Indian. Tapi I'm pretty sure mesti ada jugalah.
Maybe Indian Muslim.
Tak. They were
Oh, they're,
Indian.
they are not
Indian,
definitely non-Muslims.
Yeah. So they were saying that, like, for example, they like that macam Kelantan clamps down on alcohol ataupun.
So the reason why they have a non-Muslim wing is because just for the sake of having it. Do you think so? Or
I mean,
just because that was how it was established and formed and structured?
I guess so. And then let's like we're in a country where 40-ish% of the population are non-Muslims ish.
About 40, yeah.
Who knows? And
40.
so it's like if you want to be in power, if you want to be in government, you need the non-Muslims to support you as well. There's like that's such a big section of society that if you wanted to run this country, you think you can do without. So macam they realize that they need non-Muslim supporters as well. So I guess that's part of the reason why they have a non-Muslim wing.
Let me just try and summarize this. So let's say if you are someone who is having the same belief of people in past, right? Of course, they do believe in fairness for all religions in Malaysia, but they are also in favoring extra benefits to Bumiputra people. So that's why it's very conflicting.
Exactly.
They openly push that narrative where
Exactly.
they believe that. Do they say fairness or do they say equality? Because either word that they use, right, doesn't exactly make sense. Or
Brian, you're hitting it. You're hitting the nail on the head. Like
they
exactly.
constantly push that narrative too of being fair and
Exactly. So for me, I don't see so much.
what is their rebuttal if you were someone from like me to say, but that doesn't, but just because you're promoting fairness and equality for all races and vocally express that, but your actions and the demands that you want for policies are, let's say otherwise. So what would their rebuttal be?
I think they would say what I said earlier. The whole thing about anxieties of like Malays, that Malays are currently the poorest. Or Bumiputras are
They're
currently
playing
the
the
poorest.
victim card.
Maybe yes. I guess you can say that. So macam they will say, okay, but fairness and equality and justice means uplifting the most vulnerable of society, which just happens to be Bumiputra. So that's, I think, what their rebuttal would be.
You know about also let's say the analysis of the implementation of a NEP and all, right? Like
Since Merdeka, huge sections of Bumis have been lifted out of poverty and have attained like middle class status. So there was a very necessary and important part that the NEP had played in the history of Malaysia. Tapi right now, a lot of the benefits of the NEP just goes back to like the top echelons of Malay society. Bukannya orang the ladang Felda tak rasa.
yeah.
Don't get the same benefits as like the
They
same T1 Malay who goes celebrates Hari Raya kat Kuala London every year.
They also say it in the parliament, like let's say if you're a politician that's pro all these Bumiputra rights and all, and then you have another opposition party saying that, what about your children all that is studying overseas, and then they usually don't have an answer for that, you know. Like,
Yeah, they really don't.
they really don't have an answer for that.
I don't
Do
know.
you have an answer for them? Or you can't think of one?
Okay, so katakan I'm a politician who talks about, oh no, schools need to have Islamic studies, need to have.
I don't think there's anything wrong with the Islamic studies. Why did they didn't never force non-Muslims to?
No, okay, well, that's a whole thing. But for
Yeah.
example, let's just say this for example, right? Okay, universities should only give preference to Malays, and non-Malays should just fuck off. Contohnya. But then they send their kids to universities abroad anyway.
Not preference, you mean higher priority?
Yeah. But then they send their own kids.
Yeah, the people in power.
So because it doesn't affect them. I really do think that that's just the height of hypocrisy. I say this as a Muslim who believes that there will come a day when the sun engulfs the earth and we are blown to bits and we meet God on the day of judgment. But the thing I'm excited about is seeing those fucking politicians answer in front of God, and I want to see what they say, because I you're asking me how I would defend that. I can't. I do not know how to defend that, and I want to see them fucking defend themselves in front of God because.
Right. Okay lah. So you've made it very clear your stance. You've expressed your dislike for PN. There has to be, because I'm sure if you're someone who keeps such a close eye on politics, there has to be some sort of recognition for their work that they have done from some of their members.
Okay.
There has to be some.
Okay, no, I do have nice things to say about PN or PAS more specifically.
Maybe a particular MP that you like.
I say this as a journalist. Actually, a lot of times when I hear journalists speaking about their interactions with PAS, like PAS are actually quite easy apparently to work with and reach out to, and like they're very polite and easy to talk to. But I think what's more noteworthy for me is usually when you think about political parties, how you're supposed to do it is you say, this is what I stand for. I stand for A, I stand for B, I stand for C. If you agree with A, B, C, vote for me. Kan? Tapi a lot of parties do it macam ni instead. They do, oh, you believe A, you believe B, you believe C. Okay, then I pun akan buat A, B, C. Tapi they themselves, they don't have the thing that they stand for. They'll just do what's popular if it's A, B, C. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, they're copying some. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think most parties in Malaysian politics do number two. I think they see what people want, and then they just do what's popular, not necessarily what they believe in, not necessarily what's right. They just do what they think will win them votes. PAS, I think, is the only party in mainstream Malaysian politics that does it the first way, where they go, this is what we stand for.
Got you.
Agree or disagree, this is what we stand for. So if you agree, vote for us.
Got you.
Kalau
So
tidak, tak payah.
they're much less influenced by the public, and they stand very firmly to their belief.
They have very like, if you think about PAS as an entity, you very clearly know what they stand for, what they want.
Yep.
I guess another party that you can kind of say that for is PSM, but they're not in mainstream politics. They don't have any seats, so it's like whatever.
Yeah. I can also actually respect that. Like they are just not at all bothered by the influence or the likes of other people who disagree. Yeah. Yeah. So you actually managed to say something nice about them.
I mean,
Congrats,
that's the thing
Iqbal.
that's the thing, right? It's just like, but then there was a period of my life where PAS was part of
Yeah,
Pakatan,
exactly.
so that's why it's much.
No, but that is very true. It's very straightforward also.
Yeah.
Yeah. They do stand true and firmly.
So much. A lot of my uncles again who used to admire PAS, they still admit that PAS at least is consistent in that regard in terms
Yeah.
of just like what they stand for. Like, yeah, they've made questionable political choices in terms of just like standing by Najib during the YNDB fiasco and all these things, but
Oh damn.
yeah, for the most part, it's just like, if you look at PAS, you kind of can guess accurately what they're standing for. So macam, you don't really have that very much with other political parties.
My buddy Syed was just saying like, because it's very evident, like the more liberal states, right, like let's say Selangor, is also more established and doing monetarily wise much better. So if you were to ask the people who are from the past states or more conservative states, right, would they want to see the same success as these other more liberal states? I actually firmly believe that a lot of them would say that if it comes with a price of having to be less attached to their religious beliefs, they would definitely not want it. Do you think so?
I mean, yeah, so macam there's the stereotype yang a lot of Kelantanese voters who live in KL and so or in the Selangor area, and so they enjoy the benefits of living in, you know, having clean water, of having public transport, of
Having a nicer environment.
yeah, right. All these things of living under a state or environment that's where the governing is going well. Tapi when they balik kampung to vote, diorang vote for PAS who've been in power for the past 30 plus years, who've not been able to achieve the same level of wealth and prosperity that people in Selangor, KL ataupun in Penang have.
Yep.
And the reason that they still vote for the same thing is because they're not really concerned with prosperity, with
they're not that materialistically driven.
Yeah, I think the thing that people say that they say is that they want to keep Kelantan traditional and not undeveloped. They just want things to stay the way they are in Kelantan with the hope that satu hari nanti dorang boleh pindah balik situ, lepas tu kampung dorang masih macam kampung.
Of course they want progress, they want things to get better, but if it comes with a price of having to, less attach themselves to their beliefs than what they stand for, then I don't think they're gonna.
Yeah, so macam benda tu boleh je, like pembangunan boleh berlaku secara like sustainably. Tapi I think for them, they've made the choice that if development comes, like you say, at expense of any of those things that they
having
value
the
more,
sacrifice,
then they'd rather have no development.
Yeah. So okay, fine. Quick one. What do you think about Sanusi? The guy's everywhere, bro. Sanusi, and he's getting so much traction. He's hot right now, bro.
The thing that so kan macam you were saying that like he's everywhere and he's saying a lot of crazy shit.
Yeah.
Ada theory that political analysts have ascribed to what he's doing now. It's called the madman theory.
Yeah. How much of it is crafted?
Yeah, in the sense. So the madman theory in politics goes like this: it's where if you pretend to be crazy and unpredictable and wild, everyone else around you will be more accommodating, will be more like bersabar, will be more macam temperate because they don't know what you're capable of, what you're going to do. And so by playing the madman, you get more concessions that way. So that's what he's trying to, that's what some people are saying he's trying to do. Kita tak tahu whether this akan berjaya, but it looks like he's very, very popular. So we'll see how.
So one thing's for sure, he's definitely getting the attention of a lot of people. I mean, I heard KJ ask him on the podcast, and he mentions, and of course he would mention this. He says that, if you know me since young, I'm the same person. I've always been wild. I've always been impulsive like that. Yeah. But bro, you check out his. I checked out his Wikipedia. Right, in high school he got expelled twice for bullying. And then he's a servant of the army as well. So he's kind of like a man's man for.
Yeah. So dia macam there's something very macam Donald Trump about him where he just goes on and says crazy shit and like he's seems like a nasty person. Yeah,
but when you talk to him, he's diplomatic as fuck. He talks very well. That's what people say.
Yeah, so macam people like that have to be charming, right? At some point to win the favor of other people. So
all politicians are charming, but his one is, he's at the upper echelon of charming, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't say I'm the biggest fan of his, tapi I am going to be curious whether his strategy of picking fights dengan royals, picking fights dengan other states, picking fights with everyone, whether this will work in the state elections. But I guess we'll see.
Okay, bro. Right now, everyone already knows which side of the fence you're going to be sitting on. Just talk about why you're choosing to vote for who you're going to vote, and what have you seen with their work that you're satisfied with that has convinced you to make that choice.
Okay, macam aku cakap tadi, so kita dah cover banyak benda. Kita dah cakap pasal like how I feel about this PHBN government, how I feel terhadap like parti-parti like PN dan Muda. So for me, the thing is, kenapa aku akan undi untuk Pakatan Harapan, no surprise, is because I think they've done a good enough job. At the end of the day, this is the least shit option, which also means they're the best option we have. And kalau you tengok, for example, just comparing apples to apples, before the current MB, Amiruddin Syari, the MB before him was Azmin Ali, who is now part of PN and who is about to be supposedly PN's candidate for MB in Selangor if they win. The thing that you can compare antara Amiruddin dengan Azmin is across a whole range of metrics, Amiruddin has done better. in terms of just like how much money Selangor has been able to save in its reserves. During Azmin's time, it was maybe 2 billion macam tu.
Yup.
Sekarang dia dah 3.5 billion or almost 3.5 billion,
Yup.
which is the highest amount it's ever saved, like maybe since 2008 or something like that.
Yep.
And they've been able to do that even throughout the pandemic. And so people will say, okay, tapi jimat duit senang je, kau just start spend lah. Padahal kau
Don't do as much work lah.
kau sebagai kerajaan, your job is to spend money on your people. But they've managed to accomplish this even while spending the most on people's welfare ever. During Amiruddin's time, they spent more than 2 billion on welfare initiatives over the course of the pandemic, versus again during Azmin's time, he didn't spend as much. So that's two factors. And then the third reason why I'm voting for them, again, I think is because it's just the government has done a good job. I want this government to succeed. I want this government to go on. Diorang dah janji benda-benda macam bantuan kepada wanita bekerja, bantuan RM1,000 for like farmers, peladang, petani, semua macam tu. They've promised bantuan like RM1,500 for students and all that. Tapi all of that aside in their manifesto kan, the reason why I want them to succeed is because diorang dah buat apa yang aku rasa patut sebagai suatu kerajaan negeri, and so sebab tu I'll keep voting for them. Dia macam kau dah happy dengan kereta Proton kau, Proton tu tak pernah bagi kau masalah. Setiap kali kau masuk kereta tu dia berfungsi, kau pergi dapat pergi mana kau nak. Tiba-tiba ada orang janji kau fucking Ferrari, kau nak Ferrari, weh mesti lah. Aku pun buang lah Proton tu nak beli Ferrari. Sekali mamak tu cakap, actually tak ada, Ferrari ni third hand kot, dah 150,000 kilometer punya mileage, so dia mungkin tahan 1 year lagi. And then dia macam, why would you trade something you know works for something you're not sure works? As far as we know, this government has worked. Aku tak rasa mengundi untuk sesiapa lain akan memberi korang manfaat ataupun akan guarantee memberi korang manfaat yang korang akan mengharapkan. And so that's why for this election, I'm gonna keep voting for Pakatan Harapan BN.
Ada juga yang kata masa Muhyiddin ada di power, right kan, we were doing much better financially. So what would you say to that?
Yeah, so that's the thing. Is macam Azmin was saying that under his MB-ship, Selangor was much better off because he spent more than Amiruddin did. But the facts don't back him up. The facts show that he's wrong. The facts show that this government has spent more than him on welfare, on investments. Macam contohnya, investments in the manufacturing sector in Selangor, even during the pandemic, was higher than it ever has been during Azmin's time.
Okay.
So macam by all objective metrics, data from like kerajaan semua menunjukkan bahawa kerajaan ni has been better than kerajaan bawah Muhyiddin, bawah Azmin. And so as much as they want to argue, I think the facts aren't on their side.
Okay, understand.
Okay, so I'm not saying that benda ni akan jadi, tapi the worst possible scenario that can happen from PN winning government in Selangor, wherever, right? Selangor has one of the biggest revenues of all the state governments in the country. And so whoever takes over Selangor will have access to the biggest amount of finances. Yeah, finances. I've spoken to like political analysts. Again, they don't believe that this will happen. But what could happen is, say Perikatan Nasional takes over the Selangor state government and they have access to funds, they could convince MPs on the federal level to quit. And so now we have the Akta Anti Lompat Party, which means that if an MP jumps parties, that they will have to resign. So if they can convince enough BN MPs to resign from their seats, they will have a re-election, right? And so if enough PN candidates win those seats, that means this government right now on the federal level could tumbang, because Anwar won't have any more control over the majority. Because and so to be prime minister, you need to control a majority of the MPs in parliament. And so the worst thing that could happen is PN wins state governments. They convince...
There's a lot of manipulation going on.
They convince enough BN MPs to step down. in the by-elections, enough PN MPs win seats to take down Anwar's government, and so on the federal level, PN becomes government again.
Okay. Bro, that's a very strong, a very
Yeah.
heavy prediction or forecast of
Which
ifs.
I don't think will happen.
You
It's
hope
just-
won't happen.
I hope won't happen, but there's a generally feasible, like there is an existing
This
path.
is politics. Yeah.
Dia macam if you were
Yeah.
Doctor Strange having the schizophrenia
Yeah.
and you were on PN side, this
Yeah.
is that one out of beberapa thousand chances
Yep.
where you can take the federal
And
government.
if you can see this possibility, I'm sure as hell, they can see the possibility and they can see the route. It's whether they would execute. Yeah, but let's not talk about that for now. I mean, let's not think about that right now.
Exactly, it's a lot of ifs, so hopefully it never
Yeah.
comes to pass.
Interesting insight though. Okay. Yeah. So just for people right now, right, just the general public, regardless of who you're voting for, right, there's going to be a lot of people that would say, why do I have to vote? It's not really going to make a difference. We already voted last election. What would you say to those people? Why is it important to vote?
Because there's so much writing on this, it's not just, bukan je dasar-dasar that have to do with macam apa kerajaan, apa negara ni akan buat kat negara luar, apa negara ni akan buat dari segi macam ekonomi negara, macam benda ni akan affect depan rumah kau. So macam kalau kau kena undi pada bila-bila masa, inilah patutnya masanya bila kau mengundi, keluar mengundi, sebab kau akan nampak macam mana undi kau tu akan ada kesan, memberi kesan kepada hidup kau sendiri. And so why you should vote this time, again, this is your chance to tell the government you agree or disagree. And I'm saying this now as someone, even though I'm a PH supporter, I'm telling this to kepada semua orang. Come out to vote no matter what. I always believe, and again, I'm talking to everyone, no matter what you believe.
Yeah.
Kalau lagi banyak orang
Yep.
mengambil kisah pasal dunia yang selain daripada rumah dia orang, aku rasa dunia ni akan jadi tempat yang lagi baik, sebab maksudnya semua orang mengambil kisah. Like, I think the world will just be a better place if more people gave a shit.
Yeah.
And so if you come up to vote, that's you mengambil kisah pasal negara kau, pasal jiran-jiran kau, pasal kawan-kawan kau, pasal keluarga kau. And aku tak rasa tak ada benda buruk yang akan berlaku kalau korang keluar mengundi pun. Kecuali maybe kau kena luangkan 2 jam of your time maximum. Maybe, hopefully, we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think also most importantly, like, if you are for democracy and meritocracy, this is your chance to express and contribute to the outcome of who's going to be running our country.
Yeah, so macam contohnya parents yang ada anak-anak 18 tahun lebih yang mungkin tak faham betapa pentingnya this action of mengundi is. Parents, korang mungkin pernah mengundi beberapa kali sebelum ni. Anak-anak korang mungkin tak pernah, ni kali pertama diorang akan mengundi. So galakkan diorang, bagi tahu diorang macam mana nak keluar mengundi. Because okay, so
how do we actually go about that process?
Dia sangat simple. Like,
how do you find out where is the
right, so
the voting
again
place?
I can ask Brian to put this in the description. Korang cari kat description nanti. Korang boleh cari, letak nombor IC dengan nama korang. Korang boleh tengok mana korang akan mengundi, saluran apa korang mengundi. You have all your details. And then when you get there on the day, akan ada pegawai-pegawai yang boleh bagi tahu korang mana korang kena beratur. And bila korang masuk, you akan just ikut.
Perlu bawa apa?
Will need to bring your IC and make sure you tak pakai pakaian yang apa?
Like showing your tits
Like,
lah.
tak,
basically.
bukan. You tak boleh pakai pakaian yang ada logo parti.
Oh, okay.
So,
Okay.
so kalau you nak pakai bikini yang tak ada logo parti.
Okay. Just to avoid any altercations, right?
Yeah. So parents keluar mengundi, suruh anak korang keluar mengundi, and then kalau korang mengundi, ingat that again, I guess you're using this opportunity to tell the government how you're feeling. I'm voting for stability. I think kita for the past 3-4 tahun ni, selama ni dah nampak betapa huru-harinya negara ni. Aku dalam setahun lebih ni, aku rasa negara kita agak aman setakat ni. So aku dah letih dah. Aku dah letih buat video memaki kerajaan. So far kerajaan ni tak adalah seteruk kerajaan sebelum ni. So please tolong aku tak payah buat video by coming out to vote. and voting for stability, voting for, a better future for your kids and
The country.
Yeah, the country.
Yeah.
And again, this goes out to everyone, even orang yang tak setuju dengan aku. Kalau korang rasa macam korang perlu keluar mengundi, please do so. Aku takkan galak korang. Aku takkan, suruh korang tak keluar mengundi walaupun aku tak setuju dengan korang. Sebab aku rasa at the end of the day, setiap undi yang telah dimasukkan dalam kotak mengundi tu adalah bagus untuk negara ni.
Okay, quick question lah. Okay, Iqbal. I'm sure this one a lot of your viewers or audience will want to know lah. Do you ever plan on taking part in politics or being involved?
No, not.
Never.
I mean, never say never. Tapi macam, I think
you can't see it right now.
I can't see it right now. I think I would be too tired. I think I see myself as an introvert, having to go out and campaign and meet people and bersalam tangan, bercium tangan and bercium baby.
It's a lot of work, man, bro.
Letih baik, tak nak aku.
Yeah, bro.
Macam, yeah. I don't think it's for me. Do you see yourself possibly doing it ever?
I don't see myself with no way. But also, right, just for me to give an opinion or choose or be vocal about who I'm supporting, I feel like I'm not that experienced enough or have not seen enough yet to actually make the most educated decision even at this point now.
Let me re-answer that question. Okay. For the time being, tak. And I think for the longest time, aku tak rasa aku minat nak masuk arena politik sebab, I don't know, it's just a lot. I've always seen myself as an introvert. I think meeting people is just very, very taxing on me.
No, okay. Most importantly, do you want to? It's not about whether you think it's hard or whether it's taxing. Do you want to?
At this moment in time, I don't want to.
Okay.
Do I foresee a future where I may want to? I don't know.
Okay.
Possibly.
It would be fun, huh?
I mean, it would be interesting, but no, not anytime now or in the near future, I think.
Tapi kalau masuk, akan masuk parti mana?
Probably PAS.
No, but bro, I tell you, I see, because what's the most significant that what I've been seeing is just Syed Saddiq appearing everywhere, and he's doing a lot of work, man. Imagine the amount of energy you have to put in to do that shit.
Like again, as much as I criticize him or disagree with him, like I admire that about him. Like that must take so incredibly much of not just your working life, like it eats into your personal life as well. Like you have to, who you are personally, will
your
play
social
a big
life
part.
is gone.
Yeah.
It's damn busy on dude.
So
that's
like
it.
power to the man. But I think what it takes of someone like him, I don't think it's for me.
It's even tiring just to watch.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, all right, guys, that is it for today's episode 57. Thank you, Iqbal, for coming to the podcast. This is your second time on the podcast. All right, guys. If you've watched up till this point, it's already been, I think it's about 90 minutes in, right? You've invested 90 minutes into this podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please hit the subscribe button, leave a like, leave a comment, your thoughts on what you thought about this episode, what you thought about Iqbal's opinions and all, who you want to see in the next podcast episode, or who you would want to see on as a guest next time. And yeah, that's all for today's episode. And guys, I will see you in the next episode. Go and vote. Alright guys, regardless.
Go out to vote. And again, check out the description untuk cari mana alamat korang mengundi and all these things. And yeah, don't use the excuse that kau malas sebab benda ni masa depan kau, masa depan negara kau.
Your kids. Unless you don't want to live in this country, then
that's a whole different conversation.
Get out right now if you don't want to vote. Don't stay here. Okay, guys, give it up for Iqbal.
Missing my homies, I'm missing my oldies, my brothers, my cronies. We all went to court, but before only courts that we knew were the ones where we were shooting three, selling Kobe. To a legend, rest in peace to the old me, rest in peace to my brothers, rest in peace to my whole team. The oldest, I'm missing my shawty.